cold February morning. It was February 25th, 1957. The kind of winter morning where the cold air slices through your coat and bites at your skin. In the outskirts of Philadelphia, in a place called Fox Chase, something far more chilling was about to be discovered. Next. Wooded area, Fox Chase, early morning. A barren, desolate stretch of land. Trees stand like silent sentinels, their branches bare and unforgiving against the gray sky. The wind howls, stirring the dried leaves scattered across the ground. A young man, Johnny, in his early 20s, walks through the underbrush. He carries a makeshift stick, poking at the ground as he moves, looking for discarded animal traps. Johnny, muttering to himself, "Damn traps! Maybe I should just head back." As he moves forward, something catches his eye in the distance. A cardboard box, half buried in the dirt, its edges frayed and weather-beaten. Johnny, stopping in his tracks. "What the—" He hesitates, his breath visible in the cold air. Slowly he approaches the box, his heart pounding in his chest. Kneeling beside it, he carefully lifts the flaps. Johnny whispers, horrified, "No, no, no, no." Inside, the body of a young boy, no older than 6, lies curled in a fetal position, naked, save for a threadbare flannel blanket that clings to his frail frame. His skin is pale, almost translucent, with bruises marring his small, delicate features. Police Station, Philadelphia. Later that day. The station is abuzz with the sounds of ringing phones and hurried footsteps. Detectives huddle over desks, reviewing case files and typing reports. Detective Kelly, a seasoned officer with graying hair and a stern face, is reviewing paperwork when his partner, Detective Jackson, rushes in, visibly shaken. Detective Jackson, breathless. "Kelly, we've got a situation." Detective Kelly, without looking up. "Not now, Jackson, I've got my hands full." Detective Jackson, insistent. "You're gonna want to see this. A kid, dead in a box, found up in Fox Chase." Kelly pauses, the pen in his hand hovering above the paper. He slowly looks up, the gravity of the words sinking in. Next. Crime scene, Fox Chase, later that day. The area is now cordoned off with yellow tape. Police officers and detectives mill about, collecting evidence, snapping photos, and marking the ground with numbered stakes. Detective Kelly steps out of his car, pulling his coat tighter against the biting wind. He walks towards the cardboard box, now surrounded by a small cluster of officers. Detective Kelly, to the officers, "What do we know?" Officer, grimly. Male, around 4 to 6 years old. Looks like he's been through hell. No ID, no clothes, just that blanket. "We found him right here. No signs of a struggle nearby." Kelly crouches beside the box, his sharp eyes taking in every detail. The boy's face, once angelic, is now marred by bruises and cuts. His hair is crudely chopped, as if someone had cut it in a hurry. Detective Kelly, softly to himself, "Who are you, kid?" He stands, his eyes scanning the surrounding area, searching for anything out of place. Detective Jackson, joining him. "What kind of monster does this to a child?" Detective Kelly, determined. "One we're going to find. Let's get forensics in here. Comb every inch of this place. Someone's got to know who this boy is." Police Station, Philadelphia, night. The station is quieter now, the energy subdued. Kelly sits at his desk, staring at the boy's photo pinned to the board in front of him. The nameless, faceless child has already become more than just a case. Detective Kelly vows, "You deserve a name, kid, and justice. I'm not stopping until I get you both." He leans back in his chair, the weight of the task ahead heavy on his shoulders. Outside, the wind howls as if echoing the boy's silent plea for recognition, for someone to remember his name. The initial investigation. The discovery of the boy's body sent shockwaves through the city of Philadelphia. For the police, it was the beginning of a long and grueling investigation, one that would push them to their limits and test their resolve in ways they could never have imagined. Police Station, Philadelphia, day. Detective Kelly, weary but determined, sits at his desk surrounded by a mountain of paperwork. The boy's photograph, now blown up and pinned to the wall, looms over him. His innocent face haunts the room, a silent plea for justice. Detective Jackson, entering the room, holding a stack of flyers. "Got the flyers, Kelly. All 400,000 of them." Kelly looks up, his eyes bloodshot from lack of sleep. He takes one of the flyers from Jackson and examines it. The boy's image stares back at him, eyes wide and innocent as if frozen in time. Detective Kelly, softly, "Someone out there knows who this boy is. We just have to find them." Detective Jackson, "We've got officers handing these out on every street corner, every shop window. We're even slipping them into gas bills." Kelly nods, his mind already racing with the next steps. "Detective Kelly, it's not enough. We need more. Contact the newspapers. Get this story on every front page in the country. Send out alerts to every police station in all 48 states. I want his face to be seen by every single person out there." Jackson nods, picking up the phone to start making calls. Streets of Philadelphia. Day. Police officers and volunteers hand out flyers on every street corner. People take the papers, their expressions turning somber as they look at the picture of the boy. Officer, to a passerby, "Have you seen this child?" Passerby, "No, but my God, how could something like this happen?" Morgue. Day. The room is cold, sterile. Detective Kelly stands beside the coroner, Dr. Langley, who carefully dusts the boy's tiny fingers with ink, rolling each one onto a piece of paper. Dr. Langley, "Fingerprints are done. We'll run them against every database we have. If this kid has ever been in the system, we'll find him." Kelly watches silently, his jaw clenched. Detective Kelly, "It's a long shot. What about footprints? Can we get those too?" Dr. Langley, already on it. "All newborns have their footprints taken at birth. If he was born in a hospital around here, we might get lucky." Langley finishes the prints, setting them aside. Dr. Langley sighs. "I've seen a lot in my time, Kelly. But this? What kind of person does this to a child?" Detective Kelly, darkly, "A monster. And we're going to find them." Police archive room. Night. Kelly is alone, surrounded by boxes of hospital records, his tie loosened and shirt sleeves rolled up. He methodically pulls files, comparing footprints to the ones taken from the boy. Each time he hopes for a match, but every time he's met with disappointment. Detective Kelly sighs, leaning back in his chair. "Damn it. There's gotta be something. There's gotta be." Police station, Philadelphia. Late night. The station is quiet, save for the occasional ringing phone. Kelly is at his desk, exhausted but still working. Jackson enters, holding a cup of coffee. Detective Jackson, "You need to get some rest, Kelly. You've been at this for days." Detective Kelly, "I can't. Not until we find out who this boy is. He deserves that much." Jackson sets the coffee down in front of Kelly, then glances at the board where the boy's photo is pinned. "Detective Jackson, you're right. But we'll get there. Someone out there knows the truth. We just have to keep pushing." Kelly nods, taking a sip of the coffee. He stares at the boy's picture, his resolve hardening. Detective Kelly, "We're not giving up, kid. Not on my watch." The theories and leads. As the investigation dragged on, hope of a quick resolution began to fade. But for the detectives working the case, every lead, no matter how unlikely, had to be pursued. Each theory was a potential key to unlocking the mystery of the boy in the box. Police station, Philadelphia. Day. Detective Kelly stands at a large board filled with photographs, maps, and notes. Red string connects different points, creating a web of potential leads. Detective Jackson enters, holding a file. Detective Jackson, "We got something. A lead from a foster home near Fox Chase." Kelly turns, his interest piqued. Jackson hands him the file. Detective Kelly, "Foster home, huh? Makes sense. A place like that, kids can easily slip through the cracks." Jackson nods, watching as Kelly flips through the file. Detective Jackson, "Place is run by a Mrs. Robbins. She's accounted for all the kids in her care, but..." Detective Kelly, cutting him off. "But?" Detective Jackson, "But there's always room for mistakes. A kid could have been brought in, not registered properly. We need to talk to her." Foster home, outskirts of Philadelphia. Day. The foster home is a large, old building, its paint peeling and the garden overgrown. Kelly and Jackson approach the front door, knocking firmly. Mrs. Robbins, a stern-looking woman in her late 50s, opens the door. Mrs. Robbins, coldly, "Detectives, I already told your people all my children are accounted for." Detective Kelly, gently, "We understand, Mrs. Robbins, but we need to be thorough. We'd like to ask you a few more questions." She hesitates but then steps aside, allowing them in. They enter a dimly lit room filled with worn furniture and the distant sound of children playing. Detective Jackson, did you ever take in any children off the books? Kids who might not have been registered officially. Mrs. Robbins, shaking her head, absolutely not. I run a tight ship here, Detective. Every child who's come through my doors is documented. Detective Kelly, looking her in the eye. We're just trying to find out who he is, Mrs. Robbins. If there's anything you've forgotten, now's the time to tell us. She softened slightly, her stern demeanor cracking. Mrs. Robbins sighs. I wish I could help you more, but there's nothing. I'm sorry. Kelly and Jackson exchange a glance, realizing this lead might be another dead end. Police Station, Philadelphia, night. Back at the station, Kelly reviews another file, his face lined with frustration. Jackson enters, carrying another report. Detective Jackson, got something else. A woman named Martha claims her mother bought the boy and killed him. Kelly's eyes narrow. He's heard wild claims before, but this one feels different. Detective Kelly, bought him? Where is she now? Detective Jackson, hospital, psychiatric ward. She's not exactly stable. Hospital, psychiatric ward, day. The room is stark, with white walls and a single bed. Martha, a woman in her late 30s, sits on the edge, her eyes darting nervously. Kelly and Jackson enter, sitting across from her. Detective Kelly, gently. Martha, we're here to talk about what you told the other officers. About the boy. Martha's hands tremble as she clutches a worn piece of cloth. Martha, whispering. She bought him. From a woman. And then she hurt him. She always hurt him. Detective Jackson, your mother? She bought this boy? Martha nods, her eyes filling with tears. Martha, she did terrible things. I tried to stop her, but she wouldn't listen. She never listened. Kelly leans in, his voice calm and reassuring. Detective Kelly, Martha, do you know where she got the boy? Can you tell us anything that might help us find out who he is? Martha's eyes dart around the room as if she's seeing something they can't. Martha, shaking her head. I don't know, but I can still hear him crying. Kelly and Jackson exchange a look. They can see that Martha believes what she's saying, but there's no evidence to back it up. Detective Jackson, we'll look into it, Martha. Thank you for telling us. Police Station, Philadelphia, late night. Kelly and Jackson return to the station, where the board of theories and leads looks more tangled than ever. Kelly adds a note under Martha's testimony, but there's no real hope in his expression. Detective Jackson, so what do we do now? Detective Kelly, sighing. We keep going. Someone knows who he is. We just haven't found the right person yet. For every lead they followed, another door slammed shut. The boy's identity remained elusive, slipping through their fingers like sand. But Detective Kelly and his team weren't ready to give up. Not yet. The boy in the box had a story to tell, and they were determined to uncover it. Public and media attention. As days turned into weeks, and weeks into months, the story of the boy in the box began to spread like wildfire. The media picked up the case, turning the nameless child into a symbol of tragedy and mystery. But despite the headlines, the public's help, and the detectives' relentless efforts, the boy's identity remained locked away in the shadows. Newsroom, day. The newsroom is bustling with activity. Journalists type away furiously at their desks, phones ringing off the hook. Editor Frank Wilson, a grizzled veteran of the news world, stands in the middle, barking orders. Frank, shouting, I want that story on the front page. We need to hit the streets with this. Who is this boy? Why hasn't anyone come forward? Get me headlines that'll make people pay attention. A young reporter, Susan, rushes over with a draft in hand. Susan, here's the latest, Frank. We're calling him the boy in the box. Frank grabs the paper, his eyes scanning the headline. He nods approvingly. Frank, good. That'll grab people's attention. Make them care. I want every detail in there, Susan. The blanket, the bruises, the fact that no one has claimed him. This boy deserves justice, and we're going to make sure people know about it. Newsstands and streets. Day. Stacks of newspapers are placed on newsstands across Philadelphia. People gather around, reading the front page, their faces a mix of shock and sadness. Vendor calling out, extra, extra. Read all about it. The boy in the box. Who is he? A woman in her late 30s, Mrs. Carter, buys a paper and reads the headline, her hand covering her mouth in horror. Mrs. Carter, to the vendor. How could something like this happen? Poor child. Vendor, somberly. Ain't right, ma'am. Just ain't right. Police station, Philadelphia. Night. Kelly and Jackson sit in the station, surrounded by stacks of newspapers and piles of letters from concerned citizens. The phone rings off the hook as tips pour in, but Kelly's face is weary. He knows how many leads have already gone cold. Detective Jackson. The story's everywhere, Kelly. We've got people calling from all over the country, but nothing solid. Kelly picks up a letter from the stack, reading it silently. His expression darkens. Detective Kelly sighs. It's the same as before. People who want to help, but no one who knows anything real. We've turned this kid into a symbol, Jackson. But symbols don't get justice. People do. Philadelphia streets. Day. The city buzzes with conversations about the boy in the box. Posters with the boy's face are plastered on walls, telephone poles, and shop windows. People pause to read them, some taking photos, others shaking their heads in disbelief. Young man, to his friend. I saw that on the news last night. How does a kid just end up like that and no one knows who he is? Friend. It's like he just appeared out of nowhere. Someone's got to know something. Someone's got to come forward. Police station, Philadelphia. Night. The once bustling station is now quiet. The only sound, the ticking of a clock on the wall. Kelly sits at his desk staring at the boy's photograph pinned to the wall. It's surrounded by headlines, letters, and notes, a shrine to the unknown child. Jackson enters carrying 2 cups of coffee. He sets one down in front of Kelly and sits across from him. Detective Jackson, any word? Kelly shakes his head slowly, his eyes never leaving the photograph. Detective Kelly, no. No one's coming forward, Jackson. The calls have slowed, the letters are the same. It's like he's slipping away again. Jackson takes a sip of his coffee, his gaze following Kelly's. Detective Jackson, we did everything we could. We made the whole country care about this boy. But if no one's willing to come forward, Kelly cuts him off, his voice tinged with frustration. Detective Kelly, but someone knows. Someone out there knows who he is, what happened to him. And they're just staying silent. Jackson sighs, leaning back in his chair. Detective Jackson, sometimes people bury their secrets deep, maybe too deep for even us to find. Kelly leans forward, his voice low but determined. Detective Kelly, I'm not ready to bury this case, Jackson. Not yet. I owe it to that boy to keep fighting, even if it feels like the world's moved on. Jackson nods, understanding the weight of Kelly's words. Philadelphia streets. Dusk. As the sun sets over the city, the posters begin to fade, tattered by wind and rain. The boy's image, once vibrant and hopeful, now seems ghostly and distant, as if slowly being forgotten by the world around him. The boy in the box became a mystery for the ages. A cold case that chilled the hearts of a city and haunted the dreams of the detectives who tried to solve it. Though the world moved on, the boy remained a silent question, waiting in the shadows for someone to finally speak his name. Breakthrough and identification. For decades, the boy in the box remained a cold case, his identity buried beneath layers of time and secrecy. But in 2022, the relentless march of technology would finally unravel the mystery that had haunted Philadelphia for over 60 years. The ghost of a nameless child would at last be given a name, Joseph Augustus Zarelli. Crime Lab, night. The crime lab is bathed in a soft blue glow from computer monitors. Dr. Rachel Green, a genetic genealogist, sits at her desk, her eyes focused on a DNA analysis program running on her screen. She sips her coffee, nerves tingling with anticipation. Agent Mark Wilson enters, his expression curious. Agent Wilson. Rachel, you've been at this for weeks. Any progress? Rachel doesn't look up, her fingers tapping the keyboard. Dr. Green. Intense. I'm close, Mark. Really close. The DNA sample we extracted from the boy is yielding results. I've been running it through public genealogy databases, and I think I've got a match. Wilson's eyes widen. He pulls up a chair, leaning in close to see the screen. Agent Wilson, a match? You mean you found his family? Dr. Green, not just his family, Mark. His name. I'm about to give this boy his identity back. The screen flashes as the program completes its analysis. A name appears, Joseph Augustus Zarelli. Rachel gasps, her hand trembling as she clicks on the results, revealing a web of family connections. Dr. Green. Oh my God, it's him. Joseph Augustus Zarelli. We found him. Philadelphia Police Department. Day. The room is filled with detectives and reporters. The air is thick with anticipation as Kelly, now older but still determined, stands at the front of the room. Behind him is a large photograph of the boy, now labeled with his name. Detective Kelly, addressing the room. Ladies and gentlemen, after more than 6 decades, we can finally tell you who the boy in the box is. His name was Joseph Augustus Zarelli. The room erupts into murmurs of shock and excitement. Reporter #1 raises a hand. Reporter #1. Detective, how did you identify him after all these years? Kelly nods, turning to gesture at Rachel, who stands to the side. Detective Kelly, thanks to the tireless work of our partners in genetic genealogy, particularly Dr. Rachel Green, we were able to use advanced DNA techniques to match Joseph's DNA to living relatives. This allowed us to trace his family history and finally put a name to his face. Rachel steps forward, addressing the room. Dr. Green, Joseph's DNA was a match to several relatives in our database. We were able to construct his family tree and confirm his identity. This breakthrough wouldn't have been possible even a few years ago. It's a testament to the power of modern science and the persistence of everyone involved in this case. Reporter #2. Do we know anything more about his life or how he ended up in that box? Kelly's expression darkens slightly. Detective Kelly, while we now know who Joseph was, many details of his life and tragic death remain a mystery. What we do know is that he was a victim, and we owe it to him to continue seeking answers about his past. Police Station, Philadelphia. Late night. Kelly and Jackson sit together in Kelly's office, the photograph of Joseph Augustus Zarelli resting on the desk between them. Detective Jackson, it's been a long road, Kelly, but we finally did it. We gave him back his name. Kelly nods, his gaze lingering on the photo. Detective Kelly, yeah, we did. But it's not over, Jackson. We still don't know who did this to him or why. There's a lot more to uncover, but at least now he's not just the boy in the box anymore. He's Joseph. Jackson smiles faintly, lifting his coffee cup in a small toast. Detective Jackson, to Joseph Augustus Zarelli. May we find the rest of his story? Kelly lifts his cup, clinking it softly against Jackson's. Detective Kelly, to Joseph. We're not done yet, kid. We'll keep fighting for you. Philadelphia Cemetery. Day. A small crowd gathers around a gravestone that now bears the name Joseph Augustus Zarelli. Among them are Kelly, Jackson, and Rachel. They stand in respectful silence as a minister offers a brief prayer. Minister, today we honor Joseph Augustus Zarelli. Though we only now know his name, his story has touched the hearts of many. May he rest in peace, and may those who loved him find comfort in knowing that he is remembered. As the minister finishes, Kelly steps forward, placing a single white rose on the grave. The others follow, each leaving a flower in tribute to the boy who was lost but now found. In the end, Joseph Augustus Zarelli's identity was reclaimed through the dedication of those who refused to let him be forgotten. The mystery of his life and death may never be fully solved, but the world now knows his name, and that at last is a beginning. Current status. The identification of Joseph Augustus Zarelli brought a name to the face that had haunted Philadelphia for decades. But with that revelation came an unsettling truth. The case was far from over. The mystery of how Joseph ended up in that box and who was responsible for his death remained unanswered, leaving investigators with a cold, unyielding challenge. Philadelphia Police Department. Night. The station is quiet, the fluorescent lights casting a harsh glow on the few remaining detectives still working late. Detective Kelly, his face lined with years of unresolved cases, sits at his desk, poring over old files and new evidence. Detective Jackson, younger but just as determined, enters holding a fresh stack of reports. Detective Jackson, placing the reports down. More leads coming in since the identification, Kelly. But nothing solid yet. Kelly looks up, his eyes tired but still sharp. Detective Kelly, it's been months since we put a name to that boy Jackson, and still, we're no closer to finding out who did this to him. It's like chasing shadows. Jackson sits across from him, his expression serious. Detective Jackson, we've got a name now, Kelly. That's more than we had before. But yeah, this case, it's a tough one. Everyone who might have known something is either gone or silent. But we've got to keep pushing. Kelly nods, picking up a photograph of Joseph, now with his name printed beneath it. Detective Kelly, thoughtfully, Joseph Augustus Zarelli. For so long, he was just the boy in the box, an enigma. Now that we know who he is, it's like we're even further from the truth. How does a child like him end up discarded like trash in the middle of nowhere? Jackson leans forward, his voice low and resolute. Detective Jackson, someone out there knows the answer. Maybe it's a secret they've been keeping for years. Maybe it's something they've buried deep. But someone knows, Kelly, and it's our job to find them. Crime Lab, day. Rachel Green is back at her station, examining new DNA samples. She's focused, her mind turning over possibilities, connections, any scrap of evidence that might point to the truth. Agent Mark Wilson enters, watching her work. Agent Wilson, Rachel, any luck with the new samples? Dr. Green, I'm rerunning some of the DNA against newer databases. We've got more advanced tools now, but it's like trying to piece together a puzzle when half the pieces are missing. Wilson nods, understanding the frustration. Agent Wilson, we might have his name, but we still don't have the full picture. What about his parents? Anyone in the family tree that stands out? Dr. Green shakes her head. It's a dead end so far. The Zarelli family was large, and it's hard to trace who might have had contact with Joseph during that time. But I'm not giving up. There's something there. I can feel it. Philadelphia Cemetery. Dusk. Kelly stands alone by Joseph's grave, the setting sun casting long shadows. The grave now bears fresh flowers, placed there by strangers who had been touched by his story. Kelly places his hand on the gravestone, deep in thought. Narrator, V.O. Joseph's grave is no longer nameless, but the mystery of his death continues to cast a long shadow. The investigation remains open, the questions unanswered. Who took this young life and why? What happened in the final moments that led to him being discarded, forgotten, until fate brought him to light again? Jackson approaches from behind, standing silently next to Kelly. Detective Jackson, we're not done, Kelly. We're just getting started. We owe it to him to find the truth, no matter how long it takes. Kelly looks up at the sky, the weight of the unsolved case heavy on his shoulders. Detective Kelly, firmly, we will, Jackson. We'll find out what happened to Joseph. We'll make sure that whoever did this can't hide in the dark anymore. Police Station, Philadelphia, night. Kelly and Jackson return to the station, the photo of Joseph Augustus Zarelli still fresh in their minds. They sit down at their desks, the case file spread out before them. The station is quiet, but the resolve in their hearts is louder than ever. Detective Kelly, this case is still active, Jackson. We keep pushing until we find the answers. Detective Jackson, and we will. For Joseph, Philadelphia streets, night. The city is bathed in the glow of streetlights, the bustling streets contrasting sharply with the quiet tragedy of Joseph's story. But in the hearts of the detectives and those who care, the fight for justice continues, undeterred by the passage of time. The case of Joseph Augustus Zarelli remains unsolved, a dark chapter in Philadelphia's history. But with every passing day, the determination to uncover the truth grows stronger. The investigation remains active, a testament to the belief that no case is too cold, no mystery too deep to be solved. Justice for Joseph is still within reach, and those who seek it will not rest until it is found.